Hello, and a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Economic Forum, where we focus on all things relating to the economy. My name is Farai Gwaze. Now, we do implore you to be part of the conversation. Please feel free to send us your questions, comments, and your contributions on our WhatsApp platform, but also follow us on our social media. That's Economic Forum Zimbabwe. Now, today we'll be taking a very close look at appreciating our heritage, arts, and in the economy. I'm joined today by a very, very, very significant guest, Mr. David Guy Mutasa, who is also the president of the Rural District Council along with the Zimbabwe Local Government Association, but has been a very well renowned for his work within the arts, most notably with sculpting. Mr. Mutasa, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks very much, Gwaze.
Now, before we touch on the obvious here today, the Mbuyane and the monument that you had a very significant role in developing, I also appreciate a bit of what journey you've gone through and what contributed towards you having such an appreciation, not only for the arts, but for being able to compose physical features that we can identify with as Zimbabweans to at least speak towards our heritage.
Yeah, it actually started when I was still very young. I think at a very tender age, when I was still doing my primary education, where I discovered that I had a talent, which at that time I didn't think that it could mean anything in future. And my father was not for that, although he appreciated that there's something that I'm doing. And at a later stage, when we're doing the secondary education, when I said, no, I now want to go and do to an art school at Job Kekan Art and Craft School. That's when my father said, no, I prefer that you go to an agricultural college. Chibero was the one which was commonly known for people to go and learn agriculture. And I said, no, Baba, I don't like that. I would like to pursue with arts and craft. And he said, no, if you make up your mind, I'll pay for your fees at Chibero. But if you want to go and join Job Kekana, forget it, because he had just that in mind that, they drink beer there, they smoke ganja and all those things, but those are very individualistic. And then I said, I'm going there. I spoke to Job, who was his friend, and Job, agreed to take me so that when I sell one of my pieces, I can pay my fees, because the school had a gallery, and at that time tourism was still flourishing, and so that's where I started. I started paying for my own fees and so forth, and surprisingly, before I leave this, when I then was done extremely well, maybe I'll touch on that later. When he actually appreciated, I think probably you should bring that.
I certainly will, but I do also want to acknowledge a bit of your time at Job Kekana Arts and Crafts School. You managed to at least be industrious enough to take your talents but tie them into also your education. Tell me a bit about some of the works that you're developing during that time, because obviously this is one who is creating work, but at the same time to be able to ensure that they can sustain their education component.
Mainly I would do animals and actually do heads and, things that are cultural, like the grinding of our traditional small grains, on that guyo and all those things, depicting that. That is what the tourists actually wanted to have their hands, when they go back home. But yeah, I then developed into even making life-size statues in wood. So you could get these huge jacarandas where you could actually carve and make the warriors and all those things and so forth. And we started actually a life that way. And my schooling was very interesting, because then, when you make something and then you sell it and then you get something, And then you see yourself. I started buying a vehicle, my own vehicle, when I was still very, very young. And surprising, and at that time, you know, around the 72, 1972 or so, a young, young, you know, artist actually having his own vehicle, but never been drawn into drinking beer and all that.
I'm glad that you do bring up some of the financial benefits that came from you taking on that particular role so early. Tell us a bit about what your father's position was on how positively, rather, the art space ended up turning into for you as opposed to agriculture.
No, it was after I did the Bust of Prince Charles. When we brought him and my mother to witness the handover of the bust to the Zimbabwean government, to the then the High Commissioner to London, Mr. Murerwa, and then when he came to London, and then after the ceremony, we went to the seaside, Brighton, and all those, and we're taking pictures and so forth and so forth. And, you know, they came, we were sponsored. I wrote to 2 airlines, Air Zimbabwe and British Airways. And the British Airways were very quick to respond. And they brought business class tickets for my father and my mother to come to London for this occasion. And after that, we made some albums for them to bring back home of their journey to London. And when they were back home, my father was all the time in his briefcase with the album saying, "Do you know my son?"
And on that particular note, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back with more Economic Forum. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this second segment of our Economic Forum, where we focus on all things relating to the economy. Once again, we do implore you to be part of the conversation. Send us your questions, comments, and your contributions on our WhatsApp platform, and also follow us on our social media. Today, looking very closely at our heritage, arts, and the economy. I'm currently joined by Mr. David Guy Mutasa, who you may notably acknowledge for his contribution towards the Mbuya Nehanya Monument. But also today, we'll be looking very closely at his journey, but appreciating the significance of how the arts contributes towards Zimbabwe's heritage from an economic perspective. Now, before we took the break, you are highlighting how at your time at the Job Kekana Arts and Crafts School that led you to be able to find yourself in a financially viable position, and then you extended yourself further from there by having a significant commission, rather, that was done of the bust of Prince Charles. Tell us a bit about how you found yourself extending yourself through your studies in the United Kingdom.
When I started doing a bit of bronze casting in Zimbabwe, it was with an Italian artist who was here. And then I then said, but I would like to learn more about bronze casting. And then I approached the British Council to say, can they sponsor me to learn more about bronze casting? I had actually seen some sculptures like of the Henry Moore and so forth, you know, doing very well and all that. And then they're quite happy to sponsor me. That was the journey that led now to the Prince Charles bust. Because when they sponsored me to go to Wales, you know, Wales is outside London, and I was in a small area called Penarth, but I was staying in Wales and attached to the artists and designers in Wales, where we were now learning to do bronze casting and so forth. Then I then said, before I go back home, I must have an exhibition of my works. So we did arrange, and some of my works which were back home here came to London, and some which I had already done there were part of that exhibition. And then we arranged with the Africa Center, and then they found us a place at the Barbican Center. It's quite a prestigious place in N1. And we had an exhibition. Then we said, no, we should bring in a high-profile person to officiate. And in my mind, I said, why don't you bring Prince Charles? Because I've been reading about his role in actually being in Zimbabwe and being the person who brought down the Union Jack flag. And then I said, let us bring him here. And so we were helped by the Africa Center to bring Prince Charles to officiate. And when he came, he was going around the exhibition and then before the official opening. And he then said, I really liked your work. You know, it's quite detailed and so forth. Then I said to him, why don't you commission me to do a bust of you? Because you to Zimbabwe, you are like your Angon Mountbatten to India. And then he touched him. And then he said to me, why don't you write me with today's reference?
Right.
5 months down the line, believe me, because I had not written. I thought it was just a joke. And then when I wrote, I got a positive reply in a week that His Royal Highness has agreed to commission you. And how many sittings do you need? And how much time do you need per sitting? And then I answered to that. And I just said, things are just going on very well. And I said to Prince Charles in a letter, you don't have to pay me directly yourself. Why don't we look for a Zimbabwean, a British company with interest in Zimbabwe to then sponsor this project? And then we wrote to Rio Tinto Zimbabwe.
Right.
And the Rio Tinto Zimbabwe was quite happy to sponsor because I needed a bit of more money. You know, I was a bit shy to ask Prince Charles to pay me £35,000.
Now, with your acknowledgement of your exploits in Europe at that particular point in time, when did the transition, or should I say the appreciation of what you could contribute in the same manner to Zimbabwe happen?
The contribution to Zimbabwe then was there now. I have learned how to do bronze casting. I've learned how to structure big figures, right? Because at the foundry where we were, I think during my time, we did 3 big figures. And so I had now the guts and an opportunity now to say, when we come back home, there is no more foreigners coming to do our work. Because, you know, when I left in 1985 to go to Britain, the Koreans, whom we had also challenged when they were doing the Heroes Acre, right, took most of the money. We were paid like civil servants when we did the Heroes Acre. We were not paid as artists. Then I said, after all this now, we'll be able now to do our own thing. And I will be able to do our monuments. We've got a very rich history politically, and which needs to be documented in 3 dimensions. Let's say you put up a statue of the late Tongogara,
Right.
Nebet Chitepo, the late President Mugabe, Mangena, Lord Lookout Masuku, and all these heroes of ours. Those, they bring business to Zimbabwe because they become a tourist attraction. And educationally, people, young students, from tertiary or whatever, and so, but they will witness our history forever, generations to come. But if you leave the history for people to read. How many people will read with all this tweeting and what have you and so forth? You know?
I couldn't agree with you any further, but we will take another short break and be right back with our final segment right here on Economic Forum. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this third and final segment of our Economic Forum, where we're focusing on all things that are relating to the economy. My guest in studio today, well-renowned artist and sculptor, Mr. David Mutasa, has been sharing with us some of his commendable works locally, regionally, and internationally. Now, before we took our break there, you were highlighting to us some of the significant work that you did within the UK, but also how that contributed towards you doing more work here in Zimbabwe. Give us a bit of an understanding from the Heroes Acre. I know that there were designs that you had put forward that spoke our story. Share briefly with us on how those came about.
Yes, you know, if I touch on the economic side, before I touch on the Heroes Acre, when the late governor of the RBZ, Kombo Moyana, when they visited England and the former president held a reception, they said, we were looking for you, Mutasa, to do the Reserve Bank. And we have got some work for you at the Reserve Bank. And then I said, if you have got work for me, I'm coming back home, which then I did in 1990. And only after 5.5 years in England. And when I came back, I was given, a task to do the Zimbabwe bed, which is at the front entrance of the bank, and the murals on black granite at the front entrance again of the Reserve Bank, one side depicting agriculture, the other side depicting mining, which is the composition to our economy, agriculture and mining. And so that is the first time when we started saving money in the country and the giving work. And can you imagine downstream jobs that comes into it, where we actually get our materials, we're getting in them, most of them in Zimbabwe. At that time, bronze was being done by non-ferrous metal works and so forth. And so, you generate, and also all the staff that I was working with, everyone was a Zimbabwean. We didn't have any foreigner.
Right, and I'm glad that you do bring up the Reserve Bank building and the significance of the bird. But I know we also spoke about how outside of the current appreciation of the Vienna and the monument, you also had one that was inside the Reserve Bank. Tell us a bit about that and how it extended further to the commissioned work that we currently see now on the Julius Nyerere and Samora Machel.
Yes, the Reserve Bank, the government, they were thinking of putting a statue of Mbuya Neanda outside where the Zimbabwe bed is. And they thought that would be like a political statement, given the fact that, this is a neutral bank which accommodates, foreigners and what have you and so forth. And then they said, we put the sculpture inside because historically, the Reserve Bank, they actually demolished the old court where Neanda was tried. And then they said we can only retain that history as a bank by erecting a statue of Neanda, which is inside in the sculpture court. Then government now, the new dispensation, decided now to put a statue of Neanda by Julius Nyerere and Samora Machel, which has got a very strong historical and so forth, that that is where the Mukuis River was, and that is where she used to drink water and so forth. And then they gave me the job. You know what went on with this first statue, that blah 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 here and there. We started to correct all the things that had been highlighted, including the Zimbabwe beds. We did not know that the president preferred the Zimbabwe bed, which is on this national flag.
Right.
Unlike the Zimbabwe bed, which is at the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Right. The money that we had a different Zimbabwe bed, but the Zimbabwe bed at the national flag is different. You see the legs, it's like something that needs to take off. And that is what the president, so we corrected all those things. But during that time, something in a dream came to me and gave me a picture of Neanda when she was, they were rounded up and they had leg chains and so forth. Then I said, I've got to look for this picture. And I went to the National Archives. They took me to their very high sensitive area where they had these pictures. And I said, that's the picture that I dreamed of. Can I take a picture of that? And then they accepted. And then I took a picture, and then I developed it in town, and I started working on it without anyone knowing that I'm now doing another Neanda.
Right.
And I say to myself, something that comes in a dream like this and spiritually, this is the correct one. And then I started, working on it. And believe me, I normally take about 3 months to finish a piece like that. But this one was only 19 days. I was through with it.
Now, we are fast running out of time. I think we could have spent a whole lot more being able to appreciate the significance of your works. But what, in closing, rather, would you like to be able to at least highlight on the potential opportunities that Zimbabwe can benefit from investing in our heritage and our art sector?
I think we will benefit a lot. You can imagine that people go to see the grave of Rhodes, and there is a lot of tourism activity there. Can you imagine if we are to put a lot of statues of our foreign heroes across all provinces? We will create domestic tourism and also international tourism, and I think this will be a benefit. So, deliberately, I've always said, government needs to look strongly into this, and actually that, this will bring a lot of economic sense to our country.
On that note, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and we definitely do look forward to speaking to you again in future.
Thank you very much, Gwaze.
All right.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, it definitely was. I've been joined by Mr. David Mutasa, who notably, of course, is acknowledged for his contribution in the Neanda statue, but at the same time also has contributed immensely towards developing sculptures that speak to the heritage and arts of Zimbabwe. That's all the time that we do have. My name is Farai Gwaze. Please feel free once again to keep engaging with us on our various social media platforms. That's Economic Forum Zimbabwe, and send us your questions, comments, and your contributions on our WhatsApp platform. God bless.